Good evening and welcome to another session of Curiosity Talks. There are some of you who've been here before, and I'm so happy that all of you are back. But to those of you who are new, let me just explain a little bit about what Wisdom Circle is and what Curiosity Talks is. Wisdom Circle is a global platform connecting seasoned professionals and organizations by leveraging technology to foster beneficial partnerships. And Curiosity Talks is just one in a bouquet of offerings that we bring to our community, which is more than 100,000 members. In my sessions, I have the privilege of hosting speakers who bring wisdom, knowledge, information, and unique perspectives to all of you curious folks. Today, I have a very special speaker with me. She is my friend from school, Shashi Mariputtana, who has been a technologist for over 35 years, working in companies like Ericsson and Intel, where she retired as a senior director, responsible for business development for 5G and Edge. Her focus has been on early stage technologies such as wireless, software, defined networks, private networks, AI, and their implementation. If all that sounded like Greek to you, worry not. You're in the right place because Shashi is here to shed some light on aspects of AI. The format will be a brief presentation by our speaker, followed by a Q&A. So Shashi, I'm handing over the mic to you.
Thank you so much, Swati. So good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to do this. To be honest, I wasn't prepared to do these kind of talks, but we were just out for dinner a couple of weeks ago, and I was telling Swati that I was doing AI in my previous job. She said, "Oh, this is a topic that's really of interest for everybody." And I do know this is a topic of interest because, believe it or not, my old maidservant came to visit me a couple of days ago, and she has a son who's in 9th standard. And she said, "Akka, what's going to happen about AI? How should I, get my son? Should he do a degree? Should he do engineering? What should he do?" So the concept of AI is getting to everybody, right? Educated or not. So here I am today call it demystifying, but let me put it straight. I'm a technologist, as Swati said. I'll try to not use the jargon that we typically use. But so if there is anything, ping Swati and she will tell me to make it go lower. In the Q&A, if you want me to go higher into more technology, we can do that as well. Okay. So with that, let's get started. What's happening? Okay, here we go. So this is the high agenda that we're going to go through. So always when I talk about AI, I like to go into the past because right now, as we know, there's a lot of apprehension about AI. Everybody's wondering, how is AI going to change the world? But I love to look back a little bit and say, what happened to people and the population in the different eras that we went through, right? So as we know, even I'm in parts of India, I think we're still very much in the agricultural era, but that's how kind of the world began. It was the agricultural era. And because of that, farming and feeding, people started moving, settling, we had population growth. Then came the industrial era, when a lot of innovation started happening, factories started getting built, so people's getting concerns, right? You had concerns, what are these machines going to do to us? What's going to overtake us? But we managed it, population continued, and we adopted and we grew. Then the era that I started working in was really the information era, right? So we came in, it was the computer boom, we had internet connectivity, and something that I was part of was the whole wireless, right? So I go back to 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, all those terms. Everybody's very familiar with it, but in those days, nobody was. But what wireless ended up doing was really creating, making the world, the globe, a singular entity, right? We could talk to anybody. Even now, look at this. We are wherever in the world, we can join something like this. We can FaceTime with anybody we want. People who have, like, I'm in Dallas usually, and I can buy something in Bangalore or I can buy something from Africa and it magically gets delivered to me. And all that is a part of this network that we created, both fixed and wireless. And we adopted to that era as well. I mean, of course, in every one of these eras, we have the good and the bad, and we see that, right? The information era happened. before that, if you think about it, all of us as kids, we used to play, we used to go outside and play. Now, what do our kids do? They're on a laptop, they're on a gaming device, they don't see each other, their friends are all virtual. So there's good and bad to both. And that's something that we always need to keep in mind as we go through these different eras. And now we are in what is called the AI era, right? Here, data is the new oil, as they call it, and data is what's made AI possible. So in the AI era, what are we talking about? It initially started, believe it or not, I first heard about AI all the way back in 1985 when I was doing my master's in computer science, right? At that time, it was called expert systems. So it was really the concept of if you're doing computer science and how do we mimic the brain, which is basically a massive computer? How do we mimic it in machines, right? That was the starting of AI. And people have been mapping the brain called neural networks to figure out how it works and to understand it, right? And so now we are in the AI era, and today we're going to talk about that. So what is AI really? Like I said, AI is really the simulation of human intelligence. So the way we think, our brain thinks, how we learn, how we reason, how we problem solve, we want to be able to have machines do it. And if you think about it, this is a pretty massive problem because even today, the best neuroscientists in the world still haven't figured out exactly how our brain works. Nobody has mapped out our brains 100% to say, oh, we know exactly what it happens. There is still a lot of areas of research that are going on in our human brain. And with that, we're already talking about making machines that mimic our brains. So AI also, that's the way it started, right? It obviously, we are here today, but like I said, it started in the 1950s, 1960s, and it's been moving. The first thing that we had in AI was called machine learning, where it was basically rule-based, right? Very easily what we would do is feed it a bunch of pictures of cats, right? You feed it a bunch of pictures of cats or letters, and you said, now when you showed it an image, you say, what is this? They can say, oh, I've seen all these pictures of cats. This looks like a cat, therefore this is a cat. So very basic, and that was it, right? Now we are moving to the eras of deep learning, where machines are becoming more and more like the human brain. That means it asks questions itself, for example, a little bit, still with human prompting. Then eventually will lead to something called generative AI, which is where the machine is not being asked questions by the human. The machine itself is asking the next question itself. Now, there's whole debate on when does generative AI happen? People like Elon Musk are already saying it's next year, so it's as close as that. Some people are saying it's 10 years away. But let's see, right? We will see how it evolves. So some of the interesting things that have happened, right? For those of you, you may have heard of these, but some fascinating milestones that we've had was way back in 1950, there was something called the Turing test, which was drafted by a scientist called Alan Turing. Some of you may have seen movies about it and kind of recognize that name. So there, basically, it was a competition between a man and a computer, a person and a computer, and said, if you share the same thing between a person and a human, and a computer, could the computer guess the same thing? So that was the first step, all the way back in 1950. Then in 1997, big breakthrough, right? For those of you who remember, it was IBM, Watson, Deep Blue. It was a chess game. So a machine could actually beat the world champion at that time, Garry Kasparov, right, in chess, which was pretty fantastic, right? For those of you who play chess, you know that the number of permutations, combinations you have in chess is massive. So for a machine to be able to do that and to beat a human was pretty fantastic. Then in 2016, there was another big milestone, which was gaming, right? AlphaGo was a gaming, and the computer was able to learn the game, even adapt to as changes were made to the game. And so that learning capability came into that game. And in fact, that company that made the game was so successful that Google ended up acquiring that. And now we are all in the era of ChatGPT. I'm pretty sure most of you are using ChatGPT for something or the other, or if you haven't, after today's talk, you're definitely going to use it, right? In fact, part of my presentation here has been made using ChatGPT. So ChatGPT was created by a company called OpenAI, and what they were basically able to do was harness all that information that's out there, whether it's books, paintings, data that's there. It basically goes and understands the entire world of data that is out there and is able to respond to questions. So for example, I can ask ChatGPT, hey, I want to go to Lisbon for 5 days. Give me an itinerary for 5 days. Boom, within seconds, it gives me an itinerary. then I can say, give me places to stay. Even ask me, what kind of places do you want to stay? You want luxury? You want Airbnb? What kind? And it can give me that as well. So more and more we have begun to use ChatGPT. And that's the reason OpenAI, in all honesty, is valued as high as it is right now. Right. So all of us were very good. Why is it happening now? Like I said, we've been talking about AI forever, from the 1950s, 80s, etc. When I got introduced to it. Why is it happening now? It's really the explosion of data. And who is the cause of that explosion of data? We are. If you think about it, years ago when Facebook started, WhatsApp started, we very generously gave our data away for free, right? We didn't care about privacy. We said, no, take the data because, hey, we're getting these free applications. We can use maps to go wherever we want. But Google was learning exactly where we're going and was picking up knowledge of us, right? And then so all this data started coming out and people started saying, okay, now how can we use these massive amounts of data to do something? And in all honesty, it wasn't just consumers, but it was companies as well, right? If you look at the amount of retail data that's out there, manufacturing data that's out there. So every industry has had loads and loads of data which were hidden in databases, in the back rooms, in the computer rooms, and now they're able to do it. The other big thing is something that my previous company was very, very, important part of, which is affordable compute power. So if you think about it, Intel, 50 years ago, Gordon Moore, who was one of the founders of Intel, made a theory that every 2 years, the computing power would double and the power consumption would halve. Pretty impressive, right? And that has caused all of us, whether it is your phones, whether it's your computers, if you think about it, every generation, when we buy a new computer, it lasts for longer on a battery charge. It can do more. What we could do with mainframes, we're now doing it on our little mobile devices. So we can analyze tons and tons of data on it. And because of the way the data was being used, a new chip called a GPU was done, which is really a graphic processing unit. So it was really started for gaming. So as you know, for those of you who are youngsters, they all love gaming. And with gaming, a big thing is the response time, right? You do something, you have to be able to respond quickly, because if you're playing with other gamers around the world, the response time is very, very critical. So with that, you need to have chips that can process very, very quickly. So NVIDIA, which is now the big, big name in GPUs, they started GPUs for gaming, but then they suddenly realized, hey, we have these GPUs, we can use it to analyze other data, whether it's consumer data or enterprise data or everything, we can use it. And that's why they've been going to that. And because of that, now we're getting into specialized AI chips. So for example, even before, for those of you who have had a little bit of engineering, we used to have serial computation, right? We would go through, but now we're doing parallel, right? Everything comes together. So on one chip now, what was only doing like logic processing before, now has memory, it's got reasoning, it's got software. So the same amount of real estate that you had on a chip now is doing so much more. So we have the ability to do that. And now because of this huge demand, most of you may have heard that these massive data centers are being built around the world. In fact, recently you may have heard that Google is going to build, I think they're investing something like 18 or $20 billion in Vizag to put in a data center because of all that data that's here in India, they want to be able to process it. And that's, I think, just the start. In places like Texas, where I'm at, a couple of cities have become just data centers. So there's big warehouse-like buildings, and you go there, all you have is this huge warehouse company, which are full of chips, which are running the data and analyzing it. And now all this needs power, and they're trying to figure out how to get power. So of course, that's one of the negatives. We all know climate change is bad, and it's worse because of the power consumption. So we need to figure out how we can get better sources of power, which won't affect the climate. The third thing is, for those of you a little bit more technical, is just breakthroughs in algorithms. There is something called transformers that just figure out how you could map everything really quickly and make it go faster, right? The other big thing is open source. So one of the examples I give is when we look at our phones, as an example, the iPhone. When Apple came out with the iPhone, they had an operating system called iOS. So they did not let anybody do any changes to the operating system, right? They controlled it. You could develop an application on top of it, but we couldn't change the actual operating system. Google, on the other hand, had Android phones. So those of you who have Android phones may know that Android as an operating system, it allows anybody to make a change. As long as it doesn't break anything else, You or I, if we are good at it, we can do it, we can make something happen. So if you have a little thing that does a little, say, a timing application or a little, what should I say, weather application, you can actually enhance Android with it. Now, that is what is using AI. It's called the open source momentum. So everybody who's in the AI space is pretty much putting out all the software they have for free. So they're saying, hey, have at it, because everybody's realized there is no one company that can do everything. So collectively, we can do much, much more. As a result of it, some of you may have heard, right? China came out with DeepSeek, which is using, what I think 10% of the power that OpenAI uses for ChatGPT. So this is true because they had access to all these algorithms that the US had done. They went even further than that, but now they are providing that back to the community, and we'll see things going faster and faster. The other thing is the business pressures. As all of us know, for those of us who worked at companies before we retired, every company needs to do more every year, right? You need to increase your revenue, but you need to decrease the cost because that's what your shareholders want. So one way of doing it is to automate a lot of tasks. So already some of us are seeing that, right? There's a very, very slim chance when you call a customer service number today that you get a human voice. You are going to hear a chat bot, right? It's going to sound very human-like, but it is an AI agent that you're talking to for quite a bit of your conversation. And only if it cannot resolve the whole thing, or if you start getting frustrated and it senses that you're getting frustrated, then you talk to a human, right? Otherwise, most of the airline companies or any company that has customer service really does not want you to talk to a human agent because that costs more money. And an AI, think about it, right? We need food breaks, we need bathroom breaks, we need vacations, whereas a machine doesn't need anything. They are working 24/7 with zero pay, right? Pretty interesting. And that then, of course, creates competitive needs, right? One company does it, another company, in order to stay, has to do the same thing, and therefore you get more and more use. The third thing is just we as consumers, right? We have become very accepted. Think about it, right? All of us use Siri or Alexa so easily. In fact, my mother, who's 88 years old, would love to listen to music every morning. So before she would have her CDs or the radio. But the last time I was here, she said, Shashi, can you get me that Echo Dot from Amazon? Because then I can just say, Alexa, play MS Subbulakshmi, and boom, it plays. So she knew how to train her voice with Alexa, so it could recognize her voice. And she at 88 is learning how to use it. So it's made it so, so easy to use, right? The other thing is demand for personalization. All of us are inundated with information, right? In the past, we would read our newspaper in the morning. That was our source of news, right? So it was very easy to read the newspaper end to end. We got all our news, whether it's world news, our national news, sports, entertainment, everything, and we had enough time to do it. But now, because there's so many sources of news, how do you absorb it all and make it yours? So it's personalization, right? So most of us, I'm sure, every morning we get an email or an app tells you, hey, this is what's happened in the night. This is what you need to know. If you want to read more about it, go into this link. Otherwise, it kind of gives you general. But of course, there's a bad side of this because this starts creating a bias, right? Most likely because of certain news that I'm listening to. As an example, all of you heard that we have the most amazing president in the world called Trump. And because I'm so anti-Trump, most of the news I get is anti-Trump news. Not good, right? Because once in a while, rare thing, he does do something good. But I rarely hear about it because the algorithms for my personalization are so tuned to anti-Trump messages. Or even on my Instagram, what feeds do I get is stuff that I want to see, right? Not something else. So sometimes it's pros and cons for everything. Right? So now going to a little bit, there's AI, huge broad term, but there's different types of AI. So you may have heard different words. I just want to kind of narrow it down for you. The first thing is how we started, right? Really narrow AI, which is really very task specific. Like I said before, this is a cat, you show it a letter, this is the letter A or B, etc. Next, we're coming to general AI, which is really human-like reasoning, right? The computer is really becoming more and more like a human. That means I don't have to ask it every question. Narrow AI, it's a question and answer. With general AI, I ask a question, it'll do it, and then it may prompt me back saying, hey, do you want to know something more about this? As an example, I use ChatGPT to create this presentation. And then it said, okay, you have this now. Do you want me to add pictures to it? Do you want me to do extra? Or do you want to talk about this? And it gives me, that becomes more general AI. Then we're moving towards what we call artificial AGI, or artificial general intelligence. which really matches human capabilities, right? So it can reason like us, it has logic like us, and that's what we're going towards. Then eventually, this is what people are most concerned about, is the different terms for it, but it's super intelligent, which is because, like I said, our human brains, even the brightest, the most intelligent of us, are unable to absorb all that information that's out in the world. But computers can do that in a matter of seconds. Could they then start doing things that we as humans can never imagine, right? Could it start doing things? And of course, we've watched some movies which terrorizes us to say, oh my God, the robots are taking over the world, that, it'll come in and does that happen? Would we hope that doesn't happen? But there is potential. But who knows, right? Whether it happens in our lifetime or beyond, or whether we make sure we have controls so it doesn't happen. Okay. So the other nerd term you may hear is deep learning. So all these terms are really under the umbrella of artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence, like I said, is really the science devoted to making machines think like human beings, right? Within that, a bigger sector is the machine learning that I talked about, which is really what a lot of us use today. A lot of the work we do, whether you like it or not, there's machine learning going on. If you're using your phone, there's definitely machine learning going there. As an example, just Google Maps. You use Google Maps or Apple Maps to get you somewhere. Guess what? It's learning every time because it also picks up data. Hey, there's an accident over here, so let's reroute it. How's it figured it out? Because it's already been fed and analyzed that data. It's been trained to know that if there is something here, reroute this person this way, right? That's all there. Then we have deep learning, which really starts going into what we call artificial neural networks, which is really mimicking the brain way more than we have today. Now, all this, like I said, it's data, 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 data. But because it's so data, AI systems are only as good as data. And so that's the reason all of us have to be very concerned. And this is a huge issue among all the data scientists that are working on it, is not to make sure you have data bias. All of us already know when we're dealing with people, we have inherent bias, right? Think about it. If there is something you don't like, right? You see it, you automatically have a bias that you don't like it, right? So we need to make sure that when we are feeding the data into these machines, that bias does not come out, that we're really representing the totality of the data so that the decisions that get made on it are really, really fair and we don't move it towards one decision or the other, right? The other thing is data can be structured or unstructured. You may have heard that as well. So what do we mean by that? Structured data is things like, like you have an Excel spreadsheet, it's rows and columns, it's very specific. You have emails that are there. You have text, for example, novels, etc. That is structured. Then you have unstructured data, which could be tons of images. So you can feed it lots of images, and there's really nothing similar between every image, right? There's certain parameters that are the same, but not everything. So that becomes unstructured data. So the challenge that people who are working with AI is, how do you have algorithms that can deal with both kinds of data? So the algorithms that have gotten developed are different for this, and some of them are getting together. But that's the basic challenge everybody deals with, right? So now the more interesting thing. So this was my general overview for just to get you a little bit of, AI. So most of you can talk very intelligently about AI from now on. Now, how are we using AI, right? So I really have the use cases from a consumer perspective, because those of us, I don't think they're in enterprise here. So it's really from our perspective. So let's take you through a few. The first one is really healthcare. All of us, I think, are really facing it. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, I was setting up an appointment for my mother with her doctor. It was going to be a video appointment. As soon as I set up the appointment, I was asked to put in all the information. It already analyzed it. Based on her conditions, it was asking me questions so that it could have all the information. So by the time the doctor saw her, he or she had already had all the information about her, already analyzed, more than likely with suggestions of what could be wrong with her, right? So there you go. So your predictive diagnosis, disease detection is happening so much faster. The other thing is drug discovery. For those of you who've ever worked in the medical care space, you will know that in order to create a new drug, you have to do tons and tons of tests, right? Because if you come out with a new drug, you have to make sure the side effects are not there. It doesn't interact with other drugs. So there's a ton of analysis that has to be done. So now, because of AI, drug discovery is going to be so much faster. So things like cancer cures, ALS, hopefully, dementia. For a lot of us, we know our parents have dementia. Those drugs are going to come much faster. Then hospital automation. A lot of times now, more and more, as you go into the hospitals, you see that you'll be connected to machines, it'll be analyzing it in real time, and it'll only give a warning, and the doctor or the nurse comes in if there is something wrong, right? Next is finance. Finance, I think most of us are retired. I'm sure we use financial advisors to make sure that we have enough money in our retirement to carry on our life and carry on our lifestyle. A lot of that is going to go, makes it easier with AI. Because think about it, right? All the stock information, all the way the markets work, etc., can be analyzed much faster by a computer nowadays than it can by a human person. So that's going to become much, much more AI based. The other thing is fraud detection. All of us are very, very scared. We don't. I know a lot of friends of mine don't want to use the phone to pay because they feel, oh, I'm going to get fraud, right? All of us, I mean, in India, I hear it more and more. People are getting, what's it called? They're getting spammed, and they get giving away money. Even the most intelligent of people are falling for these kind of things, right? So hopefully we'll get better at fraud detection. So when you get a request for money, it's coming from a real person, right? The other thing is the trading in the stock market, right? That is becoming more and more automated. So if you look at it today, a lot of the stock markets, they have automatic stop if something crazy is happening. And there's a lot of algorithm trading that goes on, right? People do that. The other thing is how house markets, right? Home markets. There's a lot of prediction on where, how home sales are going to go, what the price of homes are going to be. So if you're making a decision to buy a house, you're going to be equipped with a lot more information on how the market's going to grow, so you can figure out how to do that. Third thing is autonomous driving. I mean, I lived in San Francisco. I saw Waymo in action. My kids have taken Waymo a lot. It's basically a driverless car. Little spooky, you're getting there, but it's becoming more and more common. I don't know when it'll happen in India. It'll be a challenge when it happens in India. But an interesting story, the way driverless happened was, believe it or not, some of you may know this, there used to be this big competition which happens in the deserts in Africa, where they have all these cars and they race across the desert. And so once somebody from Google came back and got the idea and said, can we have an autonomous car that can drive like that, right? So because you don't know the conditions. And they mapped out the 18 most difficult roads in the US and said, when this can be done, we'll know we can do driverless driving. And that's how it started. And it wasn't too long ago, believe it or not, I think it was less than 10 years ago, that they started working on driverless cars. And within 2 years of starting that project, they were driving the first driverless cars. And they had courses available for people who could learn how driverless cars worked and how you coded for driverless cars. That's pretty fascinating, right? So lots of challenges with driverless cars, and all that AI makes it. And of course, you have ethical challenges as well. You have a driverless car, it's not a human. There's a little baby, there's a dog on the road, there's an old person, and there is a wall. What do? You have to hit one of them. What is the ethical decision that you're going to make? That's a challenge, right? But all these technologies are getting developed, and we'll figure out how all this works, right? The other big thing that's happening is delivery bots, right? It's already happening in the US. We're getting some of our deliveries by drones. You've all heard of drones. We see drone cameras everywhere for weddings and different events and things like that. But soon we're going to have delivery of that. So your Amazon delivery or your Blinkit delivery may come on a drone very, very quickly. And I think that may happen faster in India than some of the other countries. The other thing is trucks, especially on highways. It's very easy to automate trucks, right? Because driver fatigue is a big thing when you are driving long distance. So that's one of the first places that autonomous driving is getting in and becoming and it's a great way to reduce cost as well, because drivers have to sleep and take a break in the night, versus if it's autonomous driverless, they can drive 24/7, no problem at all. The other thing is retail and commerce. You're already experienced with Amazon. You all must be wondering sometimes, hey, I order something on Amazon or Flipkart. How does it come to me in 2 hours? How does it know what I want? It's because of all that data that's been analyzed. They know, for example, in Bangalore, what is selling, what is trending. They're scouring the web to see what is becoming famous. Oh, it's Diwali. That means you're going to have lamps that are needed. You need flowers. You need, sweets, etc. And so they're going to be putting that in the warehouses close to Bangalore. So if you order it within an hour or two, you can get that. Zara, for those of you who know that, has been phenomenal at this, right? They are around the world. They have the ability to predict every market what clothes are going to go, right? And that's because of tons of data that they get. They pick it up, and then they can figure out how much inventory to have in each market because they know what's going to sell in that market. So every Zara store that you go to, believe it or not, is going to be so different. You're not going to see the same inventory everywhere. You'll be stunned. It's all because of AI, right? It has the ability to do all that. The other thing that we're going to face as consumers is dynamic pricing. That's horrible, but that's going to happen. As an example, you're going for a show. The tickets start at maybe 50 rupees or 500 rupees. But if the demand for the show goes up, the tickets are going to go up and up and up. So soon, the better seats, you may end up paying 5,000, 10,000. Not to the scalpers that used to pay it before, but actually the ticketing agency is going to start doing that, right? The other thing is education. I mean, for me, I use it. For example, I'm learning Portuguese right now because I'm going to go to Portugal next year. I'm using Duolingo to learn a new language. And that is really a great example of an adaptive learning platform. So it has the ability to adapt to the way I learn, right? So it sees what mistakes I'm making and it gives me more training on that, right? It may go faster or slower depending on what my pace is. So it really has that ability. And this now is going to, I think, start getting used more and more in schools. So if you think about it, in a class of 25, 30, 50 children, every child is not the same. Every child is so unique. They learn at a different pace. So soon you're going to start, I mean, they have started already, where you have AI-based teaching that's happening, where teachers are going to get tools so they know how to really customize the teaching for every child. Next is press and media. I already spoke a little bit about this, right? We're already getting personalized news summaries, news feeds. If you're on Instagram, I can guarantee you that your Instagram feed is going to look very different from my Instagram feed. My WhatsApp looks very different from yours, right? The other thing is deepfake detection. I mean, some of you may have heard, right? They're using famous people without their permission on ads and things like that. You have to have the ability to detect that that's not the real person. In fact, we had an interesting thing in Texas. This poor guy, good-looking guy, blonde haired, blue-eyed, sold his image for $1,000 because he wanted some money. Soon there were like hundreds of ads which had him, and he didn't get a paisa for that. But he had sold his image for $1,000. So they were just using it like crazy, right? So we need to be aware of it. The other thing is content creation. Like I said, I've used ChatGPT. Some of you have used Canva, which is a great presentation creation. And I mean, it's amazing for me. And they're all so, friendly. The user interface is so friendly. It's so intuitive when you're doing it. And the other thing is social media application. Most of you, if you have your small businesses, you want to get on social media, you'll see that you can use AI tools to know how to target your message, how to message your message. You can have multiple messages. So it gets exactly. An excellent thing of this, I'm sure all of you have heard of, is the new New York mayor, Zoran Mamdani, right? All of us think because he's Indian, Meera Nair is his mother. He was amazing at this, right? He was coming out with reels on Instagram, which was targeted for different audiences so quickly and so amazingly. And that's because they had access to data. It could be analyzed very quickly, and boom, it came out. The other thing is travel. Like I said, travel itineraries. I think travel agents are going to be very quickly become a thing of the past. You're also going to have dynamic pricing based on traveler profiles. That's going to come in. Like I said, already with customer service, we are facing that already, right? Very rarely does a human really help you with any travel planning. If you call any airline today, 99% of the time you're talking to an AI chatbot. They may sound very nice, but that's what they are. The other great thing with travel is ability to converse in different languages, right? Like I said, I'm learning Portuguese because I'm just curious. I have the time, I can pick it up. But a lot of people will just use Google Translator, right? They'll use Google Translator and that comes very automatically. It's happening. It's great. The other thing is all the security that we have, and I think it's going to become more and more. We just saw what happened at the Red Fort a few days ago with the bomb blast. You're going to have more and more biometric check-in. In fact, you look at China, they're so way ahead. And of course, they can do that because they're a communist country. They don't care about privacy of the person, but they are mapping everybody, right? With all the cameras out there, they can pretty much, you go to China within, I think, a few seconds, they know exactly who you are, where you've come in, and they have your whole history. That's how quickly they can figure out who you are, right? So that's going to happen more and more. The other big thing is virtual travel. I mean, we've been talking about it for a while. And for a while, like I said, with wireless and communication, the whole world became global. We talked about globalization, but more and more we are seeing, I think, nationalization is coming in, whether it's religion or politics, but people are becoming much more nationalistic. And if it's hard now to get a visa to go to countries, depending on which country you're from. So virtual travel will become a thing very easily, right? So you can literally act as though you can literally view the Mona Lisa sitting here in Bangalore instead of visiting the Louvre. It's happening already. It's going to become even more realistic. I mean, today it's there, but not that sophisticated. You can actually go through, you can walk the streets of Paris or Rome or Bangalore or Delhi without ever having to leave your home. And that's going to be something fantastic. Okay, then personal safety, right? A lot of us, as we're getting older, our parents are lucky. I think we are taking care of them, but I don't think our children are going to be doing it. So we'll need a lot of these apps as we go on, right? So whether it's fall detection, emergency triggering, we're living alone at home. How do you have threat detection? We already have so much with cameras in our homes. We have security systems, but more and more we'll have the ability to analyze and give that to you, right? And also personal travel, right? Predicting unsafe routes. So similar to, like I said today, Google Maps knows there's an accident. Even if you're going for a walk, it can also tell you how you should do it and where you should go. The other big thing I think is, like I said, detecting scams, phishing. It's becoming so prevalent nowadays. We know that we have people sitting, especially in certain countries, which get the data because of hacking. Because as I said, our data is all out there. It's easy to hack. People get the data. There's a whole dark web that's going after it. And hopefully on the plus side, we'll start getting better and better controls so that we get isolated from it and we get some protection as consumers. So those were the use cases I had. I could go through a lot more, but Suti said at half an hour, and so I'm 35 minutes. I'll just go a little bit of future, and then we can go to Q&A. So what is the future of AI? I mean, this is stuff that I've gathered. All of us can talk about it. Your guess is as good as mine, but these are certain things, right? Like I said, I don't think AI is going to take over the world. Not in our lifetime, I think. I don't think we're going to have that. But there's going to be the AI human collaboration. Like I said, we're already doing that in a certain thing with chatbots and personal assistants. You're going to have more and more of that, where you have, for example, you may have a robot, like we just saw Neo. I know some of you may have read that. Neo is a robot that came out. It does a lot of household tasks. So, of course, the interesting thing was there's a person behind with AR, VR glasses who's actually maneuvering Neo today. But it shows you what the possibility is. I'm sure some of us remember the Jetsons when we were young. We used to watch that. You remember that little robot that used to go around, do all the things. We're not that far away. Some of you may have seen the Boston Dynamics robot playing basketball or taking bombs and diffusing bombs, etc. So it's not far away, but it's going to become more and more in our personal use. Because like I said, today it's more in enterprise use. It'll come into our world as well. The other thing is productivity. I mean, I've seen people who are writing novels using AI, right? You have an idea, it generates it, and you can write it very easily. It's still your content, but you're going to have AI tools to figure out how to write it better. We're already using things like Grammarly, for example, to fix our grammar and make sure we sound correctly. You're going to get more and more. If you want to do a research book, for example, you're going to have research so much more easily available to you without you having to go to the libraries or spend tons of hours doing it. You can do that yourself. The other thing is connected lifestyles, right? All of our relationships, we have digital presence. I'm sure you may have heard of it. Facebook, Meta, talked about the whole concept of having these avatars around and having the meta universe where we all have virtual cells of ourselves living in this metaverse that are all talking to each other. And like I said, the trends really, AGI is coming in, something called Edge AI that I was working on, which is really more of getting computing more and more closer to where it's needed. Robotics, quantum AI. Quantum AI is basically just a different way of the way the computers are, right? So it's just innovation that's happening in that space. So this we can go on and on, but what I want to end with is the ethics and risks. Like I said, with every technology, we have the good versus the bad. So all of us, especially, we need to be aware of what risks are and make sure. So with AI, because you have all that data out there, we need to make sure that when it's being used, there is transparency and how your data is being used. And we understand how the data is being used and how these algorithms are working. Other big thing is the privacy and data protection. We may be too little late for this, I think that horse has left the barn, and I think we're trying to close the door. But lots of governments are putting in place. As an example, already, I'm sure you've seen that before you never realized that you had cookies, which was monitoring every time you went to a new web page. Now, if you look at it, every new web page you get to, you get a little privacy thing saying, do you want to be monitored? Do you want your location to be no? If you say no, they have to respect that. So yes, it's coming after the fact, but they are coming in. The other thing is accountability. For those companies that are working in it, they have a clear responsibility for AI outcomes. Like I said, with self-driving cars, right? What is the outcome when you have these problems, which are even hard for us to fathom? How is the computer going to fathom it, right? How do companies really take responsibility for it? Today, I read, for example, that a company was suing OpenAI because ChatGPT for something gave some misinformation about this company. This company was sued for millions of dollars. And so they are suing OpenAI saying this was wrong information. Of course, OpenAI puts a little privacy saying, hey, ChatGPT is just recommending, don't take this, make sure you correct it. But hey, some people will assume it's real. How many of us have been fooled by a video that we get on WhatsApp and we think it's really Amitabh Bachchan speaking or Shah Rukh Khan speaking? It's not, right? But we can't detect it, right? We think it's real and we say, oh my God, is this what Amitabh Bachchan says? Which is kind of hard, right? The other thing is the societal impacts. As we've seen with social media, you've had the negative side of it, right? You've had all these horrible things of bullying of children, of horrible videos being made and holding people at ransom. So we really need to make sure they're avoid that misuse and the harmful applications. And then ensuring AI benefits all communities. Like I said, if we have data which is inherently biased, we've had that in the past where some communities are marginalized. We need to make sure when you're using AI that it's not only certain parts of the communities that benefit from it, that it really, really benefits everybody, not just one strata or a couple of stratas of our population. Okay. With that, hopefully I didn't go fast, Suti, and I was a little slow, but we have 20 minutes for questions.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Shashi. The next time I am in a conversation about AI, I won't sound so clueless, I think.
There you go. That made me feel good.
Yeah, thank you so much. So there are 2-3 questions I will ask on behalf of everyone because I think those are very general questions. Yeah, thank you. So I'll address the elephant in the room. A very commonly asked question is, what jobs will AI replace? And I think this is critical because we have children and grandchildren and all are coming into this space. And so this is something that we all want to know about.
Yeah, I think a lot of the jobs which are repetitive are already changing, are already getting deep. Like I said, customer service agents are getting replaced by AI, right? Truck drivers are going to get replaced by AI. I think financial planners get replaced by AI. A lot of, if you go to factories, a lot of the jobs, they already have robots now doing the repetitive tasks that humans used to do before, right? So anytime you think of anything that is repetitive, it is very easy for AI to replace it, right? Even things like visual inspection jobs, quality control jobs, they become AI. So in fact, the advice that I give most youngsters nowadays is, if you want to have a future-proof job, go into the service industry. Because the service industry is some place where that jobs can never be replaced. As an example, your refrigerator, when it goes wrong, who are you calling? You want somebody to come fix it. Maybe a robot will come in the future, but for a long time, it's going to be a human who's going to come fix it. And all of us are relying more and more on digital, products. Like I said, even most people at home now, you have a microwave, you have a fridge, you have an AC, everything. So people need to fix it. So the service industry is going to be, I think, the ones who go, those jobs are safe. Everything else is up for grabs.
Okay, that is reassuring plus frightening. And what do you think are the downsides of depending too much on AI? When something new comes in, everybody wants to jump on the bandwagon.
Yeah.
But is there a caveat that we should not be using it so much?
Yeah, I think the big thing that's happening, which already is with social media, is the human collaboration, right? Think about it. Even today, a few years ago, we would have had a talk like this in person. We would have been in an auditorium somewhere. We would have met, we would have had coffee afterwards and talked about it. Here now, we are all virtual, right? So the human collaboration, that human touch, I think is going to go away and it's threatening to go away, and we need to protect against that, right? That is, I think, a big downside that we need to watch out for. The other thing is, I think the downside really is how data can be used in an incorrect way, right? We're already seeing that. We're getting spams. We're getting, it's very easy for, vulnerable people, especially, who the information can be used incorrectly. In fact, even I talk about driverless cars, but there've been so many instances of those cars now being hacked. Even now, if you look at it, most of our cars, even if they're not driverless, they have tons of computers in it. 50% of your car more than likely is a computer that's driving it. It's very easy to hack it, right? And it goes off wrong way, everything. They can do that, right? And especially as we saw the terror in this thing in Red Fort, it was actually somebody driving. How hard was it to make it a driverless car and run it, right? Because they didn't care who they were hitting. So those are the downsides of AI. That's why I said ethics and bias is so critical for us to be aware of. And all of us should make sure that we are questioning and holding our politicians and our policymakers to task about it. And those of us, especially our age, we have the ability to be much more vocal than youngsters are, right? So we need to make sure we are really going to be, kind of holding every responsible. It's happening. I mean, you've seen Europe is putting in guardrails for the use of AI. US is doing it. Lots of countries are doing it, but it needs to be more global, right? One country can't do something different than the other. Then you know what's going to happen. There's going to be the bad actors are always going to find out where the loopholes are, and we need to protect against that.
Right. So I don't want to be selfish and hog Shashi to myself. And so I welcome any of you have any, opinions, any questions, anything to speak to her about would be wonderful.
I have a question.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, when we are using, for example, Chat GPT, is it safe? Like we give out so much information. Is it safe to, personal information, etc.?
I mean, that is what you're comfortable with, right? I mean, in all honesty, when you say, it's the same thing as Facebook, right? Where Facebook or Instagram, you're putting a lot of personal information out there. I think a lot of it goes, again, like I said, with us, we need to be responsible for what information, because I can guarantee you anything that you put out there is going to go out somewhere, right?
Okay.
So you need to make sure that the information that you're putting out, you're okay with it getting out there. Because in fact, even if you look at ChatGPT, it'll ask you that the data that you're putting there, is it okay for them to train their models on it? Because they did get into a lot of trouble because lot of authors were suing OpenAI that they were taking all your novels and analyzing it and giving you summaries. They said, "Hey, you never asked us permission for it, so you can't do it." But that's after the fact because their books were already available in digital form. They're available out there, and and they didn't have the right controls. But they're trying to claw that back. So it's the same thing for us. Our information is ours, and you need to be protecting your information.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yes, Lalit, you wanted to ask something?
Yeah. So, whatever you create using AI, there is no copyright for it. Is that true? So, which means
No, that's not. No, that's not true. I mean, it's the same thing like anything else, right? So, like I said, they've chosen to make AI more open source, right? So, if you're doing a new algorithm or you're doing that, all that is open source today because they want to have the collaboration happening. But say you create a new AI app, right? You create a new ChatGPT, for example. You can still own it. Like OpenAI owns ChatGPT, right? They've
no,
effectively
what I
licensed.
what I
That's why the
mean is
evaluation
that
is billions of dollars, right? Is because they own ChatGPT.
yeah, no. What I'm saying is, say you are using Canva and you create an image.
Yeah.
Now that image, your name will appear that you are the one who has created it.
Right.
However, that image is available to rest everybody. So
It is, yeah. I mean, that's a great question. And I think it's the same thing because think about it, right? You're using Canva for free if you're using the free version. So one of the reasons they give you Canva for free is because then they have the ability to use what you created for others as well. I mean, soon maybe it'll become a revenue model. I mean, Canva is still relatively new. Maybe they'll have a subscription model in the future, like the way YouTube does, where they say, okay, if you create something, they have trademarked it, you have copyrighted it. If so many people use it, you'll get a portion of revenue. That may definitely happen. I think those models are going to come. But today it's early stages in Canva.
Yeah. And another thing, like there's a lot of talk about AI, and AI is getting into almost every aspect of life. So does everybody has to learn everything of AI? So what is it which a person should, basically learn, from user's perspective?
I think for us as users, if you don't want to be technical good, you're going to use it just the way you use a phone, right? So for example, the way all of us, when we first got our smartphones, we had very few applications on it. Now most of us have tons of apps, whether it's your banking app, you don't know how it's working, right? You're interfacing with the bank app. You don't know that underneath it, it's what operating system it's using, what calls it's making, and things like that. You're totally unaware of it. Same thing's going to happen with AI. Like I said today, you use ChatGPT, you don't see how OpenAI, the algorithms they're using, the data that they're using to give you your answer. So we don't, if you don't want to, you'll use it really just as a tool, right? Sometimes you won't even know that something that you're using is being powered by AI until they tell you it's being powered by AI. As an example, like with Siri and Alexa, a lot of people I think didn't know they were AI agents, right? They just said, oh, it's conversation. I'm having a conversation with Siri, or I'm having a conversation with Alexa. They didn't realize it was an AI powered, and they thought it was actually a human voice. It is a human voice. They use that voice, but soon they trained it to talk, use the same voice, but to be able to answer all your questions, not that initial stuff that they trained it on when the person first recorded their voice.
Yeah. So what they say is that you should not use it, just as a search engine. So you should go beyond that. So
Yeah.
can you suggest some necessary tools which everybody should get familiar with?
I mean, I'm saying if you don't want to, you don't have to be familiar with AI at all. But my thing is, I think all of us should be curious, especially, to keep our brains. I mean, nowadays there's so much information out there. So if you're interested in AI and want to learn more, there, like Coursera has some amazing courses, both free and paid. You can actually go into more detail. I think I gave you enough of an overview today. Like Swati said, she knows you can very say, I know what deep learning is, I know what AGI is, I know what natural AI is. So you can that amount of information I think is enough for 99% of us. But those of us who are going to have jobs, I think anybody who's still working should be aware of what the AI tools are for their particular industry and make sure they're leveraging it. Because those of them who figure it out and figure out how to use it in the best way are the ones who are going to move up in their careers in their field. So that's my advice that I give for people who are still working is make sure you're very, very aware and savvy about the tools that are available and you
Yeah.
use them.
Great.
Yes,
Thank you.
Dr.
Yashi?
Madhavan. Dr.
Thank
Madhavan
you.
would,
Thank
I
you.
think,
Thank
has
you.
put up his hand. So if he
I,
can
I
ask his
just wanted to
question.
know one thing, madam. Actually, I am Dr. Madhavan from Hyderabad. I just want to know this meaningful data. You said like there's an invasion of data. There's so much of data available these days. That's the reason for AI to come into the picture. So now this data, whatever is coming into our space, is basically not very informative. They are not really, when it comes to process engineering or when you want to apply it in the process industry or some specific engineering industry, these datas are not that useful. They are not meaningful. And then they have to be classified and filtered, pre-processed, which is very expensive and is out of reach of the common man. So what is your opinion on this?
No, you're absolutely right, right? That's a great question. But if you look at, so the last few years that I was with Intel, I was actually working with companies on how they were going to use AI, right? You're right. There are tons of data. Like I said, there's unstructured data, structured data. It has to be classified. It was expensive to do. But what's happening now is because the algorithms are getting better and better and better, the cost to actually classify the data is so that barrier is getting lower and lower. So initially, it was the big companies that were doing it, the Siemens and GEs and Boeing and all of them. Now, more and more smaller companies have the ability to do it, but they won't do it across everything, right? So that's why in fact, I'm talking to FKCCI on Monday to tell them how, for their industry, what are the questions they should ask. They should not just say, let's use AI across the board. No, I totally agree with you. The benefit is not going to come. So you need to know for what you're doing, when is the best time to use AI and where do you use AI? So in all honesty, for process engineering, Intel was using a lot of AI already for process engineering. So if you look at companies like ASML, they're using AI, a lot of it in process engineering. That's how chips are getting faster and faster, right? So it's already being used in certain places, but a lot of industries, it's going to take longer just to be able to classify all the enormous amount of data they have.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that. And there's one more question I have, if I'm not taking too much time. Actually, this is related to this the way human beings act and think. You said the way AI is about how humans act, think. So actually, it is how humans act basically, because that is all weak AI, and what is neural network and all that, that space is occupied by weak AI. So how when you start thinking like human beings, when the machine starts thinking like human beings, it becomes strong AI, and then that is actually what is called artificial general intelligence. And I think basically it is symbolic expression of things and all that. And so you tend to be a bit apprehensive of what is going to happen. So mostly this discussion would what is happening today's trends, basically it involves a lot of weak AI, and where a lot of interaction where acting like human beings has taken a predominance over thinking like human beings.
Right.
This is my take. How about you?
You're absolutely right, but I think that's why I said if you look at the people who are saying when does AGI happen, when it's actually acting like humans. Like I said, Elon Musk, of course, he's bullish. He's making $1 trillion, so he may be right. He thinks it's going to happen by next year, right? And Jensen, who's the CEO of NVIDIA, is saying it's 2027, right? So So what they're saying is it's not tens of years away; it's in the near future, and that can be debated. Is that 1 year? Is it 10 years? We'll see what happens. But
Yeah.
I hope India steps up to it, because I think one of the only things that I'm very disappointed with, India is not doing enough with AI, right? India is really behind in that. The US and China are way, way ahead of India.
Neeraj, you wanted to ask a question?
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah. Good evening, ma'am, Shashiji. I want to know, like, can AI robots be trusted with the surgeries on human bodies?
Actually, we did a lot of at Intel. We actually demonstrated that with the wireless network and thing, you could actually do a lot of robotic surgeries. It's already happening today, right? So what we were demonstrating is today you have robotic surgeries already today. If you look at it,
Right.
but today it's happening where the doctor's also right there. What we were showing was it could actually happen over a distance, right? You could actually have it where the doctor was not even present close by. It's happening, and as with everything else, more happens, people get comfortable with it, you'll get more research, more innovation, and you'll iterate, you'll learn more, and it'll get more and more and more and more.
Right.
Yeah. And they're doing brain surgery already with robots today. So
Okay.
okay.
I have a question, Shashi. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Go ahead.
yes, we can.
So, Shashi, just to give the context before I pose in the question, if the differentiation between human and AI is going to be our human emotion and behavior, tell me first your assumption, my assumption is right or wrong. Then I can ask you the question.
No, sorry, say that. You're saying it's
The human behavior and emotion are a differentiator or
correct.
advantage to vis-a-vis the AI systems. I'm
You're
saying
absolutely
systems.
correct. No,
So-
that's brilliant. No,
So
absolutely.
great. So if that is my assumption, then the question to you, Shashi, is how do I, as an individual, leverage AI and still beat AI in that game and stay ahead of it in career, in life? I'm asking a generic question because obviously I'm not asking a specific. What are those skills which you think that we should upgrade ourselves on to make ourselves more relevant for the future? Because that is a differentiator we have.
Yeah. I think
I'm
that's
sorry, I asked you a very roundabout
it's a
question.
great question. No, that's a great question. It's a very thought-provoking question, right? But you're absolutely right. I think creativity is something where I don't think AI is going to be. I mean, even though you have the case where you have AI generating paintings, that's there already. In fact, some of you, if you've watched that Netflix Mahabharata, all the images are all AI generated, as an example. That's already happening. But I think that's happening with a lot of prompts from humans, and it's happening. So I think still on the creativity part, humans are always going to be ahead, because a lot of creativity is emotion, right? And even if you think about it, right, I like some painting, you like something else. It's not generic, right? We can't say this is a beautiful painting, right? Even if you say a painting which is like the Mona Lisa, you'll still have a lot of people saying, oh, I saw the Mona Lisa, nothing great about it, right? It didn't strike me as fantastic. So that's a very personal decision. So I think in that space, I don't think machines are ever going to be as humans. So that's what we need to make sure is we keep that humanness, as we say, and that's going to be the differentiator. Absolutely, 100% agree with you. Let's hope for that.
And let's hope we can figure out the way to beat it.
Exactly. I don't think you're going to beat it. I think what you need to say is how are you going to leverage
Manage,
it?
yeah,
Yeah,
leverage it. Yeah, I
to do
use
it
the
better.
word leverage. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you, Sunita, for your question. And thank you, everyone. As usual, unfortunately, the hour has gone by so quickly that Shashi has kept us enthralled by what AI was about and what the future of AI is going to be. And I'm sure I will grab her and get her to do another session with us in the future. So thank you everyone for being here. And Shashi, thank you so much. You agreed to do the session just at a minute's notice, and you are here and you've spoken to all of us. So we had a great 1 hour. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to me so patiently. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice evening.